Hello, lovely people. Welcome back to another book chat. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about a book that has taken me much too long to get to, and that is Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale. Obviously, there was the TV show last year or something like that. I haven't seen that either because I'm always behind the times on everything, and particularly when it comes to TV shows and movies, I'm normally watching them a couple of years after everyone else at least. But there we go. I did finally get around to reading The Handmaid's Tale, and this was sort of my first book of the new year, which was an interesting way to start the year. I could have thought that one through a little bit better, but it was an excellent read. It's actually my first Margaret Atwood book, and she writes beautifully. I really enjoyed the writing. It was beautifully done. There was a little bit of quite dark humor in there. It was very immersive. You really sank into the character. You were seeing everything so clearly through their eyes. There was very little distance involved, which was perfect for the telling of the story. And the story itself was, fairly terrifying in today's climate. What scared me the most was, as Offred was looking back, she could see just these little steps, and then suddenly everything just changed, and there just wasn't really any time for resistance because nobody seemed to notice until that last minute. And that's quite scary when you look at a lot of what's going on in the world around us at the moment. And these books like these always are. I remember Fahrenheit 451 being the other one that really affected me when I read it as a teenager, I guess, probably. With the sense of how the world could just quietly creep away on you and change, and you don't really notice. It's that kind of, frog in a pan of boiling water thing, and the heat gets higher and higher, and suddenly it's all over. And that's a really frightening thing, and it is very frightening if you look at what is happening in the world around us. We hope we would notice and that there is enough resistance, that things would never get to this point, but at the same time, it's frighteningly plausible. If you haven't read The Handmaid's Tale, without going into too much detail, is a world in which women have become property. It is men are the only ones allowed any freedom. Women are not allowed to read. They're not allowed to write. Everything is communicated in pictures, and the handmaids are retained purely for the purpose of breeding. It's not exactly light, but it's done very well. Overall, I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. Like I say, kind of frightening reading. I did take my time reading it, because there was quite a lot to absorb and quite a lot to think about, especially reflecting on how the world is at the moment and the directions we're going in. It's the sort of thing that becomes quite important reading. And I do always enjoy these sort of dystopian tales where it's not like the sort of grand dystopia of Hunger Games or something like that. It's more relatable and it's just scaled down that little bit to where you can really see it happening. What it hasn't done is I now really want to reread Fahrenheit 451 and 1984 because I haven't read either of them for ages. I would like to revisit those now as an adult. The only thing I felt for me didn't really work in this was the final section, which is presented as it's another 100 years on or so, and they're looking back at this time, and it's this sort of scholarly, this was the history and what can we learn from it and this sort of thing. And I actually prefer the ambiguity of where the story ended before that afterward, and that was the only bit for me that I was like, not a fan. Offred is a very passive protagonist, and that fitted. That didn't bother me at all. Normally I don't enjoy that sort of thing, but it fitted because she couldn't really be active. There is no choice for women to be anything but passive in this society. So it did work really well within the sense of the story. I don't think it would have worked very well in any other story, to be honest, but yeah, I did think that was brilliant. So have you read The Handmaid's Tale? What did you think of it? Did you enjoy it? Did you think it was a bit too slow? Was she too passive? What did you not like about it? And also, what other than Fahrenheit 451 and 1984, which are both on my list at the moment, what other of that sort of near dystopia would you recommend for me to read? Because I'd love to get a few more of those on my list. And that is all for today. Thank you so much. Bye.